there's things you can learn from your competitors.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to anybody who's competing for the same target customer, I want to win that.
Hi, I'm Joyce Chen, and today we're talking about what it takes to launch a company in a competitive space. I'm sitting down with founders who entered crowded markets and still found a way to carve out something unique. Let's get into it. All right, guys. So a lot of you operate in pretty competitive industries. What made you decide to enter these markets knowing how crowded they are? And how did you evaluate that decision? Chad, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I think we evaluated that ultimately the competitors in the space were addressing the problem incorrectly and not really solving the problem, like the job to be done. A lot of folks are just listing sites, helping connect owners and buyers, but they don't actually help the small business owner do the transaction all the way to the end. So we felt like we were coming in with a different thesis on how to fix the market.
And Christine, what about you?
I would say it's the same for us, where we really focused on the problem that we were trying to solve. We're in the personal finance space. We have an iOS app for the young middle class, and what we were looking at was a lot of solutions that didn't really solve the anxiety and avoidance that a lot of people feel about their money. So it wasn't like, oh, let's find a place where there's a lot of competition. It was more like, despite all these competitors, US credit card debt is still over $1 trillion. What's going on here? Maybe we need something different.
Phoebe, what about you?
I don't think that I ever could have come up with the idea on my own to run an influencer agency that works specifically with fintechs. I don't think I realized whether or not it was a competitive space, but after doing that in-house and then starting with my first client, I kept having conversations where people were telling me that this was a service they needed. And I guess similar to what Chat was saying, I guess there are a lot of platforms and products that do influencer marketing really well, but my background is actually in writing and strategy. And so I guess providing also that angle and like really helping from start to finish with script editing, concepting, etc., ended up being a differentiator that I didn't really expect going into it.
Yeah, so in a way, even though it was a quote unquote competitive industry, you just found naturally in working that you had some differentiations.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's funny because I think you can almost argue that almost every industry is competitive, and with Mercury at least, when I joined Mercury, I had a boss who told me, well, why are you leaving? Doesn't SVB exist already? And I said, well, if there were already solutions that were working so well, why is there people who are interested in using Mercury, right? And so the same could be said for all of your respective companies. Well, if the solution was already around and being solved, then why is Baton growing, right? Yeah, so I would love to hear a little bit about how you're trying to solve your specific problem versus transform the whole industry. Are you looking at it at the problem that your companies are trying to solve for the entire industry, or are you looking at it from a very niche perspective with regards to who you're trying to solve the problem for?
Yeah, I mean, I think the long-term vision is to completely transform the industry, but we've started with kind of just helping buy and sell businesses better, doing something that for many folks in the market, it's the first and only time that they'll sell their small business. And many of the buyers, it's the first time that they're buying. And so they really need a trusted advisor through that process. Longer term, at scale, we think we have the ability to transform the market and turn it into the next great asset class.
Yeah. Especially for these small, medium businesses where this is their livelihood, right? Yeah.
It's essentially their retirement, right? Like once they retire, the ability to sell it and get $1 million or get $500,000 or whatever it is lets them actually have a retirement and spend it with their kids or grandkids versus just working until they can't work anymore.
Right. Which is a big issue with these kind of changing dynamics and aging population. Yeah. I really love, Christine, how your company is also addressing these changes. And can you speak a little bit more about that and what you're trying to address with your specific product?
Yeah, Brightfin is for the young middle class. So we call them merits, middle earners rich in time, not the Henrys, not the high earners, middle earners. And the problem there is that these are the people that the finance industry is currently not serving. So we're not trying to transform that industry, but we're saying we're here for all the people that has never served very well. So if your net worth is between $1,000 and $250,000 and you have a question about money, where do you go? Right now, a lot of people are on TikTok, they're Googling stuff, they're struggling, and so we're there for them to give them better answers than what they have today.
And do you plan to expand Brightfin's ICP in the future, or?
Potentially. We definitely plan to expand our product offering. So we currently have an iOS app that's very simple for budgeting, but there is a whole world of financial advice or education that people are kind of missing. So that's kind of what's next for us, is taking that ICP that we have today, those merits, and bringing them more solutions. Then we can talk about expanding the profile.
Got it. Okay, yeah. So first step, merits, and then world domination.
Exactly, in that order,
Yeah.
A to B.
Yeah. Phoebe, what about you? How are you looking at your competitive landscape and your market?
Thank you for saying that people are on TikTok looking for financial advice. That is very true to
I'm
what
there,
I do.
I know.
I think people are going on social media to get advice, and there's a lot of bad information out there. And then there's a lot of people who either are marketers at companies, or they are founders, or other people who want to put their product in front of these eyes, but don't know how to sort of like find the right people, make sure the advice is sound, make sure the advice is coming from a strategic lens. So there's like campaign theory and strategy to all of this. So I guess what I do is I guide these marketers. Actually like working with founders a lot as well, because they have all the ideas but don't necessarily want to be in the weeds in marketing. And I kind of help them figure out how to choose which influencers to work with, and how to make sure that those creators are putting forth advice that makes sense for their product. So I don't think that I want to change this industry, but I definitely want to make sure that people are getting good financial advice when it's sponsored from companies I work with. Beyond that, I don't know yet.
What? Maybe a very lofty question. I'll check back in with you in a year.
Yeah, please do. I'm only 1 year in.
Great. Well, I'm curious to know, how do you see your competitors? Do you see them as friends or opponents?
Maybe a little bit of both. I don't know. There's things you can learn from your competitors.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to anybody who's competing for the same target customer, I want to win that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we have a, frenemy maybe relationship with most of the competitors, just to hear how they're approaching the problem. It enables us to think about it from first principles. Are we missing something that we didn't take into account? And also just build those relationships. What we've found is a lot of competitors end up pivoting that are startups. They end up not ending up in the space, and it's helpful to just build those relationships, because then we learn from their kind of journey.
So no plans yet to plant spies into your competitors?
No.
But if you have any suggestions.
No, definitely don't do that.
Okay, noted.
Yes. Otherwise, that might end up with bad press.
Yeah.
What will you say that you've learned from your competitors?
I think sometimes kind of what not to do, but then also sometimes what to do. I think I really appreciate that folks are in the arena trying to solve the problem. And if you understand that they're trying to make stuff better for small business owners, they're going to approach the problem with, positivity. And if they're coming up with something, it's a valuation calculator, it's how they're presenting data, we want to kind of like learn and make sure that we can take what works for Baton that's appropriate, and understand maybe what's not.
When you see a competitor doing something that you really enjoy, and you're like, wow, that was such a great idea, do you think, oh, I want Baton or Brightfin to do that, or do you think I need to have something completely different?
I think it's I want to understand the ethos of what resonated, and generally it's challenging assumptions internally of how we approach the problem. Should we give a valuation estimate before we give a full-fledged, with financials estimate? Just think
For the property?
for the small business
Yeah,
owner,
yeah.
and there's a bit of a hurdle to get to the full estimate, or the full valuation. Do we actually want to have a, lighter weight opportunity to reach and connect with folks and then have our sales team reach out? So, kind of, we saw a couple of other competitors doing that, and
Yeah.
it challenged our assumption that
Yeah.
actually maybe we should kind of think about doing that a bit more.
Right.
Not exactly the same way, but with how it works for us.
Phoebe, what about you? And I'm sure with your kind of model, there's quite a lot of competition.
Yeah, it's always really helpful for me because I think, for example, for pricing, there's just not that much public information about how much people are charging for exactly what I'm doing. And I think that one thing that particularly women, especially at the earlier stages of their career, tend to do is undercharge and undervalue themselves. So I think that's been a big thing for me, is just like seeing what other founders who are doing something like what I'm doing are charging. Sometimes it kind of blows me away, but that's always really good and important for me. I think also data is not really something that comes super natural to me. So when I first started, I was kind of going off of vibes. And I've seen a lot of competitors do really incredible work with making sure that they're actually thinking about which influencers work, like actually when you look at the numbers and the conversions, and that's really transformed my business. That's, at first, I had a lot of reticence to that, and I just did not want to embrace that at all. But I've grown a lot in that way and continue to seek out people who are better with numbers than I am when it comes to measurement and growth.
I mean, that's the superpower of a founder, is to be able to find people who can be complementary to your skill set, right? Yeah. Is there anything in your business that you deliberately don't do, even though you think, oh, that's a good idea, that could be profitable?
Yeah, I think from our perspective, the standard VC model is to find some subscription and get people on it. So it's like venture capitalists understand SaaS
Yeah.
and subscription, and
They love recurring revenue.
And we've definitively chosen not to do that. Most of our money comes from success fees. So it's actually when the business sells. They are big checks, right? They're six-figure checks when they sell, but we have been very definitive that that is when the magic moment happens for the owner and the buyer, and we're actually generating value rather than trying to charge either side. I think a few of the listing sites actually charge buyers, and we've 100% sort of said that, like, just access to our listings is not a value moment any more than charging anyone to use Airbnb as a potential guest or Zillow as a home shopper. We really believe that the buy side should be free, and our job is to give you an opportunity to buy a business.
Right. And that's based on kind of, is it a brand decision, or what was the
think
thinking
so.
of that?
And part of it also the math, right? If we're making $100,000 on an average transaction, it's very hard to come up with a subscription model that in 8 months would get us to even anything close to that. Our average sale is in 6 months. So we make $100K in 6 months. That doesn't really fit with a subscription model. And also, our job to be done is sell a business as quickly as possible. So we don't want people on the platform, whether they're buyers or owners. Hopefully in 10 years, it's a month-long process to list and sell, and for a buyer to come on and decide that they want it. And I think if we were in a subscription model, it's sort of a perverse incentive to actually take longer.
Yeah, especially when you're building a marketplace where those incentives are so important. Yeah. Christine, what about for your tool for financial? Would you consider it financial literacy, or?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
It's interesting because for the same reason, solving the problem, we've decided that a subscription model, a B2C subscription, is exactly the right way to go. And that's because we want to build customer trust. That's really critical. Anything about your money. We have decided, to kind of answer the question, we've decided not to sell ads, and we do not sell data. So we're basing this on that trust that the customer has in us and solving the customer's problem. There are B2B offerings out there, but I think the reason this problem hasn't been solved yet is because there isn't a good enough consumer product. And people, I think, sort of assume that because this is a crowded space, none of these will ever work. I think that's not true. Maybe we're not the ones to do it in the end, but the problem is real. People need it. And if you can make a product that's good enough, they will be willing to pay for it.
What about you, Phoebe?
I don't work with big celebrities, even though there's a lot of money in that. I think for the series of company that I tend to work with and enjoy working with, it just doesn't work. You're throwing a lot of money at very high funnel impressions, and it works a lot better to work with a bunch of smaller creators, even though that ends up being way more work for me and ultimately less money. But
We should talk.
yeah, it works better.
I think it's interesting how, with all of your businesses, although the business models are so different, the customer types are different, the stakeholders you're engaging are different. At the end of the day, the way that you're making your business decisions are kind of based on both two elements. It's based on trust, like you're building trust with your customers. Like you said, you want to build trust through a subscription model. You want to make sure that you're not just charging people to look at the marketplace. And you want to work with people who trust that you're in your experience to deliver a good product to them. But you're also kind of basing it off of your own founder DNA and like what you inherently care about. So I think that's really, really interesting. Ultimately, what starting a business is all about, just building something that you yourself can stand behind. Thank you so much. Thank you for spending the time with us today.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Thanks for watching this video from Mercury. If you're into hearing from ambitious founders, make sure to subscribe for more.